Moon.
I'm Dave Goode.
Together we work as Future Art.
We're here based out of Sydney, Australia.
And we're putting on Future Arters Vivid, which is the closing party to the Vivid Festival. It's a massive party full of digital art, AR, VR, all happening here. Future Art started, I guess, it was a pandemic moment, but it has its roots in our love for art and collecting art. I think I started to collect art in London in the late 90s when I was working over there. And I discovered very early on the work of like Invader and Banksy, and that really changed my life. So I became obsessed with street art. And then I met Dave a few years later, and we started a music career. Dave and I have been working together for like 16 years. And during that time that we were traveling the world, I was always collecting, little bits of art here, bit of arts there. And over the years, I ended up with a pretty sizable collection that I was really proud of. It was about 300 works. It was like Damien Hirst, I mentioned, obviously Invader, Banksy, Obey, all this cool street art that I loved. And the catalyst for Future Art really came out of a horrific event. It really it was literally out of the fire. It's really like a phoenix rising. That's where sort of Future Art came from. And in 2019, I received this awful news that the entire art collection that I collected over the course of these 15 years had been burnt in the fire here in Sydney in 2019. And that was really it was really hard for me to deal with, because I'd really pinned my identity on collecting art, being an art collector, and having all that ripped away was really quite a little bit traumatic. And at the time, Dave and I were really into crypto, really into blockchain. We'd been exploring music on the blockchain. We were working in crypto from 2017. And it just sort of at this moment where I love a blockchain and losing this art, it really just, for some reason, I got spat out and discovered crypto art in 2019. And the first time I bought a piece of crypto art, it's all the pieces connected. I could hold crypto art, I could keep crypto art, I could store it, travel with it, it wouldn't be burnt in a fire. And then it really tapped into this thing that Dave and I had always been working on, which was royalties, IP. We've been in the music industry for a long time, so it really resonated, the idea of royalties, transparency was a big kicker. And so all that sort of germinated into the beginning of the pandemic when, like many people, we lost our jobs. Dave being a touring DJ, I was working in LA, booking bands and doing songwriting, managing songwriters. And so all that got ripped from us. So it was this perfect storm of I love of blockchain, this loss of traditional art, and then this pandemic, which really led us to what could we do while we were locked down. And out of that, all that came Future Art, where we decided one day to grab some of the artwork that I collected, some of the work that Dave had collected, and then put on a party for sort of 300 of our friends. And that's essentially where Future Art was born.
I mean, originally it was meant to be for there's a cafe. Let's just do a little cafe with a screen and show this collection. He had quite a big collection that stage. And then the more we went into it, the larger it became. We started having different rooms, and then let's get the immersive tech. So I was involved in a virtual reality company. So let's have immersive tech here. Let's have an art installation here. Let's do the big projection there. And it just became this monster.
Yeah, I guess when we announced it in 2020, everyone was locked down. It gave us a real chance to reach out to all these incredible artists in the scene. So we were really quite lucky because we were quite early, and in 2020, in that early stages, there was only a very small amount of active crypto art buyers and crypto artists, and we took that opportunity and spoke to a lot of them. For example, we reached out to Ferocious, we spoke to Xcopy, we reached out to people like Colby, The Sarah Show, Robness, Max Osiris, all these people that have been incredibly active in building the crypto art movement. We were able to talk to them, learn from them, understand what they were doing, and then come back and put on an event.
And with the Aussies Matty DCL Blogger, he was just at the start of his kind of NFT kind of career as well, and with GT down in Melbourne, we really see this kind of great
grassroots
level in Australia, and so it was great, friendly little community.
And then you combine that with the the general growth of like, you know, the crypto art scene and then into the explosion of 2021 that we all know, or the, you know, the incredible bubble or the incredible like hype cycle that happened. And you know, we sort of were right there in the middle of that, and Future Art just was able to put on events for artists especially, and for punters and people to come and like share their love for crypto art essentially.
Stay on you for a sec. I have to ask about the fire. What was it like getting that call?
So in 2019, when I received a phone call that there'd been a really, you know, horrific fire here in Sydney, and it had destroyed the storage facility where I kept my life's collection. I was really, at the time, my mum called me and was like, you know, the storage facility's on fire and it's all over the news, and I was like, it's gonna be okay. Like, my stuff's in like a concrete building, concrete floors, concrete wall. I thought it'll be okay. And then sort of, about a day or so later, I realized that the whole building had been condemned and written off from fire.
Industrial fire.
Industrial fire. It burned for like 2 or 3 days. It was like a really big thing. And I was surprised at how, affected that I was about something that was so material. I sort of realized that collecting art and being involved in that art, I had a real connection to these artworks. I was really passionate about Banksy. I had been a really early adopter, and I'd been a big believer in his work, and I'd been a promoter and a champion of it, and I'd followed his career, and in somewhat it had helped define me as a man, and me as like what I was into and my hobbies and stuff, and then to have all that like ripped away and just end up with like dust. I remember I booked a flight from LA to Sydney. I flew back and I was on some Facebook group and I met some dude. The whole building was like condemned and had, you know, like police all around it. And we broke into the thing to crawl through the remains of the fire because I wanted to see for myself, you know, whether or not it was destroyed, and got to the door. And it was, you know, it was just carnage and everything was burnt. And but I guess what I took away from that was that my love for collecting art didn't die out, and I really wanted to get involved again after a certain amount of time.
But he couldn't speak about it for a while. Like,
there was
just saying, like,
yeah,
it was about 3-4 months, and
it's still painful. Like,
anytime we get on the phone, 'cause we used to speak in Delhi, he was in LA, I was in Sydney, and we just talked about crypto. We wouldn't mention the art for a long time.
That's very true.
Yeah, we couldn't talk about the art for a long time.
But I think also like there was something about the crypto art movement or the crypto art scene when I first stumbled across it. It wasn't literally stumbling across it. When I stumbled across SuperRare, a lot of it reminded me of the early street art. There was a very small collector base that was super passionate. The artists were super involved. There was a community around it. They were communicating. The prices were like, you know, it was $200 for we bought X copies for $200. We bought, you know, Sarah shows for, you know, half an ETH. An ETH was like $200. People were buying that, but you could still sense something really special. And I think by going through that journey of being an early collector, I was able to recognize that, something is real happening here. So I think that was the positive, that if there was a positive, the positive came out of it is it allowed me to discover this new movement. And without the fire, who knows, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the best advice that I've heard in crypto over the time I've been involved would be take it slow. Just really take it slow. Don't rush into anything. Double check everything you're doing before you press any pressure on buttons.
Don't buy drunk.
Don't buy drunk. I really think just taking it slow.
I think if there was any advice that I've got from collecting NFTs and crypto art, I do think there is, I think the biggest advice I have is there are no rules. I think that's something I really believe in. For an artist, that there are no rules, that, you know, what works for one artist doesn't necessarily need to work for another. And I look at like someone like Goode, who is really specific and really particular and really takes his time with his releases, and he makes incredible work. And then like on the counterpunch to that, you've got like an artist like Robness, who we absolutely adore, and he'll mint anything at any time whenever he feels the need. And I think that there are no rules, and that you really have to find your own.
What made me decide to buy an NFT?
Which NFT? Like,
okay, the fear of missing out, FOMO, that's what I said before, to be careful what you do. FOMO is a big thing in our world, I think, and I think a lot of people get caught up on that and get wrecked, pretty much. But what made me, it really sang to me whenever Sats first showed me the Nifty Gateways and the SuperRare when I got into it at that time, then Wearable. It was really just, check out this, it was like bringing me back to my record collecting days, and it was very much like that. And I think that's what brought me to it, was my record collecting days.
That's cool, really interesting. I think what makes me buy an NFT, I think early on it was just, I always believe in buying what you love. Like, I think that has always, people say that all the time, but, and definitely, as they said, like the whole bubble and the whole, NFT explosion, I think a lot of people lost sight of that because you couldn't buy what you love, because if you didn't buy it at that second, it wasn't available. So that really did create a FOMO hype train where you didn't have time to actually think about what you love because things were evaporating in front of your eyes. But I do think now that we're in, a much quieter period, that, you've got more time to find stuff, find artists that you really like, and prices have come down to a more acceptable level, and there's not that fear of missing out, not that bubble mania. What's your favourite NFT you've collected?
I have to think about it, I think it's actually, and I've got it on my phone as my thing, it's got to be the Max Osiris, Third Eye Smile. It was through this Rari gang kind of moment where Max and Rob got thrown off SuperRare, and there was Rareable came online, and there was this whole trash art movement on Rareable. This is whenever Sats really kind of showed me what crypto art was, and really started the collection and just getting into it. And I think that was my first. I think it's that first love kind of vibe, isn't it? And I think that's my favourite.
I think my favourite NFT I own changes every day, with no doubt. Sure. They're like small children, they love each other in their way. But right now, I think it's Robbie Barrat. It's the Lost Robbies from the infamous 2018 AI. He was one of the first AI artists. I think he is a genius, and I think he'll be remembered as a genius. And I think NFTs will be in the next 10 years. Obviously, being like the Louvre and the MoMA and the Broad and and the Mocha, they'll be everywhere. I think they're already everywhere. I think the future for NFTs is only like astronomically up. I think that I look at NFTs as the tech, but I think also what more interesting is the crypto art movement. I always like to define the two of them, NFTs being the technology and crypto art being the movement, and I think the crypto art movement will continue to flourish and continue to prosper, and I'm really excited to see where these artists and collectors take the movement.
I think NFTs in the future will definitely be more music. I think the music side of things will, what that's going to look like and how that's going to be, I don't know just yet, but I think the music side of the industry, creativity is going to be a big part of it.